The Atlantic Ocean stretched wide and silent under a silver moon, its endless waves shimmering like 1,000 broken mirrors. On its glossy surface sailed the Ocean Majesty, a floating palace where the wealthy and powerful came to forget their troubles and often to create new ones. Alexander Graves stood at the stern, a crystal glass of bourbon in his hand. His tailored midnight blue suit was immaculate, his tie knotted with surgeon-like precision. The cold wind ruffled his dark hair, but his gaze was distant, locked somewhere between the horizon and the weight of his own thoughts. He wasn't supposed to be here. Not just on the ship, but in this entire situation. At 39, Alexander was the youngest self-made billionaire in America. Graves Tech Industries had started as a tiny cybersecurity firm in a rented warehouse. Now it shaped the backbone of corporate security from New York to Tokyo. He had built a fortress out of code, leverage, and calculated ruthlessness. But even titans needed rest, or so his board kept reminding him. They had nearly staged a coup to force him to take a vacation. And so, for the first time in 12 years, Alexander stepped back. Not for leisure, but strategy. A few days on a luxury cruise would allow him to size up other CEOs, sniff out weaknesses, perhaps even poach a few disillusioned executives from rival companies. But tonight was different. The gala had been exhausting, a room full of snakes, wearing tuxedos and sequined gowns, all hissing about mergers and acquisitions under the pretense of polite conversation. Women had flirted, men had boasted. Everyone had tried to impress or manipulate him. Alexander had left early, claiming fatigue. The truth? He was suffocating. Graves Tech had become an empire, but in doing so, it had swallowed him whole. His personal life was a graveyard. No wife, no children, friends who were really just competitors waiting for him to slip. So he wandered the ship's labyrinthine corridors alone. The hallways were carpeted in deep navy and lined with Art Deco panels. Most guests were either drunk at the casino or locked away in their suites. The farther he walked, the quieter it became. He wasn't sure how long he had roamed when he reached Deck 7, the VIP floor. His suite was at the opposite end, but he didn't notice until he paused outside room 723. Odd, he didn't remember passing this section before. The door was slightly ajar. That caught his attention immediately. Security on the Ocean Majesty was meticulous. Every door auto-locked. No guest would leave their room unguarded, especially not on this deck where rooms cost more than some people's homes. At first he assumed a maid had forgotten to latch it, but when he pushed gently, the door swung open without resistance. Curiosity flared. Inside, shadows moved lazily across the walls, cast by dim overhead lights. But this wasn't an ordinary suite. It was a stage. Heavy crimson curtains covered the windows. The walls were lined with black silk, and in the center of the room stood something so out of place, so alien, it rooted him to the spot. A cage. Not metaphorical. A literal cage of polished silver bars, 8 feet tall, round like a bird cage. Inside, on a velvet-cushioned floor, knelt a woman. Her wrists were chained lightly to the bars above her head, more for show than true restraint. Her dress had once been an elegant backless evening gown. Now it was torn at the hem and split down the side, revealing bare skin and bruises that darkened her olive complexion. She looked up. Their eyes met. For a moment, Alexander couldn't move. He couldn't speak. The woman's eyes were the color of storm clouds over a violent sea, gray with a hint of silver. But they were not the eyes of a victim. No fear, no pleading, only defiance. "You're not supposed to be here," she said, voice calm and clear. Neither was he. Alexander glanced behind him. The hallway remained empty. Silence pressed against his ears like cotton. His logical mind urged retreat. This wasn't his business. Wealth came with boundaries. You didn't cross lines drawn by other powerful people, especially not on an international cruise ship where laws bent to whoever paid the most. But his feet refused to move. "What is this?" he asked finally. "A performance," the woman replied. "One that doesn't begin until tomorrow." "Who did this to you?" The same people who own this room, and by extension this ship. She tilted her head, a strand of dark hair falling over her face. They'll kill me at sunrise, unless you walk away and forget what you saw. The words landed like ice water poured down his spine. I don't walk away, Alexander said, almost without thinking. A faint smile curved her lips. That's what they're counting on. He moved closer, gripping the bars. Tell me who they are. I'll make some calls. You don't understand. Her expression hardened. This isn't business, it's power, the kind of power that doesn't care how much money you have. You can't threaten or buy your way out. I've made entire governments bend. His voice dropped to a growl. Don't tell me what I can't do. The woman sighed. Your name? Alexander Graves. For the first time, something flickered in her eyes. Recognition. Then you're already in danger. Before he could ask more, footsteps echoed in the hallway. Heavy, deliberate. Alexander turned toward the door. Two figures appeared. Men in tailored black suits, faces blank as stone, eyes hidden behind tinted glasses. Not security. Something. Colder. You've entered a restricted room, Mr. Graves, one of them said smoothly. Return to your suite. This matter does not concern you. Alexander's hands curled into fists. Every instinct told him to back down, defer. But another part, the part that had clawed its way from poverty to power, rebelled. This woman is being held against her will. You are mistaken. I'll contact the authorities. There are no authorities at sea. The man stepped forward, a subtle threat in every movement. Please, sir, for your own safety. Alexander weighed his options. He could fight, he could try to run, but the cage behind him wasn't just physical. It was a trap, baited and ready. The woman's voice broke the tension. Go. Please. But Alexander Graves had built an empire by doing the one thing others feared most. Saying no. I'm not leaving without you. The moment Alexander spoke those 6 words, I'm not leaving. Without you, the entire air in the room shifted. The two men at the door exchanged a quick glance, subtle but not subtle enough to miss. These weren't security guards bound by policy. These were enforcers, cleaners, the kind of men who made problems disappear without leaving a trace, especially at sea where jurisdiction vanished like smoke. One of them reached beneath his suit jacket. Alexander acted before his mind even registered the decision. He grabbed a heavy crystal lamp from the nearby side table and hurled it at the first man's head. It smashed against his temple, shattering into shards. The man grunted and staggered back, more stunned than seriously hurt. The second man lunged, but Alexander was already moving. Years of private boxing lessons, Krav Maga, and the natural. Instincts of someone who'd fought to survive in boardrooms and back alleys alike took over. He ducked the punch aimed for his jaw, drove his elbow into the man's ribs, then delivered a brutal uppercut that sent the enforcer crashing into the wall. It wasn't enough. Not nearly. The first man recovered fast, drawing a silenced pistol from beneath his jacket. His eyes were cold, professional, no hesitation. This is it, Alexander thought. This is how billionaires disappear. Then a new sound cut through the moment, the piercing wail of a fire alarm. Red lights strobed across the room as sprinklers hissed overhead, releasing a harmless mist designed to simulate smoke without actually drenching the expensive suite. Somewhere in the distance, an automated voice began announcing an emergency drill. For a split second, everyone froze. Then the woman in the cage whispered urgently, "That was me. I triggered the room's alarm. You have 30 seconds before backup arrives." Alexander didn't waste time. He grabbed the pistol from the disoriented guard's hand, flipped the safety off and aimed it between the first man's eyes. Keys now. The guard hesitated, but only for a second. He tossed a sleek black key card toward Alexander. "You won't make it off this floor. They'll sink the whole ship before they let her go." "I've sunk bigger things than ships," Alexander growled. He turned and swiped the key card against the cage lock. The mechanism clicked, releasing the door. The woman stood up gracefully, despite the weight of the chains. "Your name?" Alexander demanded. "Celine." She extended her chained wrists. Without thinking, Alexander shot the locks open. The bullet ricocheted dangerously close to her skin, but Selene didn't flinch. She stepped out of the cage like a queen returning to her throne. "Can you run?" he asked. "Better than you." She smiled faintly. Footsteps thundered in the hallway. Reinforcements. Alexander grabbed Selene's hand and bolted for the service. Door at the back of the suite. A door meant for staff, hidden behind a decorative panel. He had noticed it earlier out of habit. That habit, born from years of scanning every room for exits and weaknesses, was about to save both their lives. The door led into a narrow maintenance corridor, dimly lit by emergency lights, pipes lined. The walls. The hum of the ship's engine vibrated underfoot. "Where?" Alexander asked breathlessly. Selene pointed down the corridor. "Service elevators, deck 4, lifeboats." They ran. Behind them, voices barked orders. The guards wouldn't shoot outright in public areas, too many witnesses, but it wouldn't stop them from staging an accident or blaming Alexander for a violent incident. As they neared the elevator, Selene pulled a small device from the folds of her ruined gown. It looked like a simple bracelet, but housed a microchip glowing faintly blue. "Security override," she explained. "I've been planning my escape for months. I just never expected you." The elevator doors slid open. Alexander and Selene stepped inside. She tapped the device against the panel. The lights flickered. The elevator descended rapidly, bypassing standard security protocols. As they dropped toward deck 4, Alexander finally asked, "Why are they holding you? Who are you?" Selene met his gaze without fear. "I'm the daughter of Lucian Moreau." Alexander's blood froze. Lucian Moreau, the kingmaker, the unseen hand behind the world's most ruthless private security firm. Moreau had toppled governments, orchestrated corporate assassinations, and brokered deals that made trillion-dollar industries rise and fall. He wasn't just powerful. He was a myth, a ghost. And notoriously, he had no family. Until now. "My father faked my death years ago to protect his empire. But when I learned what he was doing, the trafficking, the extortion, I tried to expose him." Her voice hardened. "So he sold me to the highest bidder." Alexander couldn't process the full weight of it. Not yet. All he knew was this. He had stumbled into a war between gods, and now he was in too deep to turn back. The elevator dinged softly. Doors opened onto deck 4. Dim emergency lights painted the hallway in red. Selene whispered, "Stay close. From here, it only gets worse." They stepped out of the elevator into a corridor that smelled faintly of oil, salt, and old metal. Deck 4 was where the luxury ended and the machinery of the Ocean Majesty began. Cargo storage, service rooms, and crew-only access ways. Selene moved with purpose, barefoot and swift, despite the bruises and torn gown. Alexander stayed close, his stolen pistol steady in his grip. Behind them, the elevator doors shut with a soft, final ding. "We have maybe 2 minutes," Selene whispered. "The override I used will delay their trackers, but it won't fool them for long. My father's men are already rerouting." Alexander's mind raced. He wasn't used to running from danger. He usually hired people who made danger run from him. But this wasn't a hostile takeover or a courtroom battle. This was raw survival. Selene led him past rows of metal crates stamped with shipping labels in half a dozen languages. Hidden luxuries brought aboard for the mega-rich. But Alexander noticed something else. Unmarked crates, all uniform, heavy-duty, the kind used for smuggling or weapons transport. His jaw tightened. This ship wasn't just a vacation paradise. It was a floating empire of secrets. Selene paused at a small control panel next to a sealed maintenance hatch. She tapped her bracelet to the reader. The hatch slid open with a hiss, revealing a narrow catwalk suspended over the ship's massive water filtration tanks. "Once we cross," she said, "there's a secondary service corridor that leads directly to the lifeboats. But they won't expect us to take it. Too exposed." Alexander nodded but didn't lower his weapon. "Why would your father risk bringing you here? He could have kept you hidden anywhere." "He wanted to auction me." Selene's eyes darkened. "This cruise isn't just for networking, Alexander. Once a year a select few gather here. Oligarchs, cartel heads, corrupt royalty. They don't just trade stocks and real estate. Her voice dropped. They trade people. Alexander's stomach turned. Even for a man who'd seen the ugliest parts of human ambition, this was deeper rot than he imagined. As they crossed the catwalk, shadows stirred behind them. Figures appeared at the maintenance hatch. 3 more men in black suits moving fast. Celine cursed under her breath. They're quicker than I thought. Alexander raised the pistol and fired. 2 clean shots. One guard dropped with a thud. The others ducked back, but it was a delay, not a deterrent. Move, he barked. They ran, boots and bare feet clanging against the metal grating. The catwalk swayed slightly with their weight. Ahead, the secondary corridor loomed. But another figure blocked their path. A woman this time. Blonde, sharp-faced, dressed in a sleek combat uniform. She held a matte black rifle trained directly at Alexander's chest. "You've caused quite a mess, Mr. Graves," she said calmly. Her accent was European, hard to place, but it's over now. Celine stepped forward, placing herself between Alexander and the rifle. "Astra!" The woman's cold eyes narrowed. "You were never supposed to escape. Your father's orders were clear." "I'm not his property." "No," Astra agreed, "but you're his leverage. And now, so is Mr. Graves." Alexander's pulse roared in his ears. He calculated the distance. The weapon, the odds bad, very bad. Then a loud crack echoed overhead. For a split second, no one moved. Another crack, metal snapping. The catwalk above them, already weakened by years of corrosion and possibly sabotage, gave way. A massive steel beam crashed down between Alexander and Astra, smashing the grating and sending debris flying. Astra was thrown back, rifle spinning from her hands. Alexander grabbed Celine's arm. "Now!" They bolted through the opening as the catwalk collapsed entirely behind them, sealing off the pursuers. For now. They sprinted down the corridor, breath ragged, every muscle burning. "Who the hell was that?" Alexander demanded. "Astra. My father's enforcer." Celine didn't slow. She was raised by him, loyal like a hound, and she won't stop. As they neared the lifeboat deck, a voice crackled over the ship's hidden PA system. Male, rich, calm. "Alexander Graves, Celine Moreau. This is Lucien Moreau. You have made poor choices tonight." The voice echoed around them, every speaker on the ship broadcasting. "Return to your suite, Alexander. Walk away. I'll even reward you for your curiosity." Celine froze, her face pale. "But if you continue," Lucien's voice turned colder, "you will force me to treat you both as liabilities. You will not reach the water alive." Alexander lifted his chin toward the nearest lifeboat. "Bay, he talks too much." Celine's lips tightened into a grim smile. "Yes, he always has." They reached the bay doors. Alexander swiped the stolen keycard. The heavy doors groaned open, revealing the launch deck and a sleek black escape boat, ICE, Millionaire's toy, fitted for speed and stealth. But so were the guards pouring onto the deck behind them. At least 10, rifles ready. Celine turned, grabbed Alexander's pistol and whispered, "Trust me." Then she shot out the floodlights overhead. Darkness swallowed the deck, chaos exploded, and the real escape began. The floodlights burst with a shower of sparks, plunging the deck into pitch black. Only the soft glow of emergency strips along. The floor offered any light, just enough to see movement but not enough for precise aim. It was chaos. Guards shouted in multiple languages, some fumbling for flashlights, others sweeping the deck with laser sights that cut sharp red beams through the darkness. But Celine was already moving. She grabbed Alexander's wrist and pulled him into the shadows behind a stack of supply crates. She pressed the pistol back into his hand, her breath warm against his ear. "Stay low. Keep moving. I'll draw them off." "No," Alexander hissed. "We stick together." She smiled even now. Stubborn. "Good." From the shadows, Selene grabbed a flare gun off the wall. Without hesitation, she fired it toward the opposite end of the deck. The flare screamed through the air, erupting in blinding white light and bouncing along the metal floor. Every guard turned instinctively toward the light. Celine and Alexander sprinted in the opposite direction. "That'll only buy us seconds," Alexander growled. "All we need." They reached the black escape boat. It was gorgeous. Carbon fiber body, tinted shield, military-grade thrusters, probably capable of outpacing anything the Ocean Majesty could launch after them. Alexander leapt in first, offering Celine his hand, but she paused at the edge. From the darkness behind the crates, Astra emerged. No rifle, no backup, just a compact pistol drawn in one hand. Celine shoved Alexander aside and stepped fully into view. "You don't have to do this, Astra." "You're wrong." Astra's voice was soft, almost regretful. "It's all I know how to do." She fired. Alexander's instincts kicked in. He grabbed Celine and pulled her down just as the bullet tore past, grazing Celine's shoulder. Blood bloomed, dark against her pale skin. But Astra didn't fire again. Instead, she lowered the pistol slightly. "It's not personal. He'll kill us both if you don't come back. You know that." Celine's eyes narrowed. "Then it's time to stop him." Alexander didn't wait for permission. He raised the stolen pistol and squeezed the trigger. The shot clipped Astra's thigh. She staggered, but didn't fall. "You never hesitate, do you?" she muttered. Celine pushed Alexander into the boat. "Go, I'll handle her." "The hell you will." Another guard appeared behind Astra, raising a rifle, but Celine moved like a shadow. She surged forward, kicked the weapon aside, and drove her elbow into Astra's jaw. The enforcer crumpled without a sound. Before more reinforcements could arrive, Celine vaulted into the escape boat. Alexander was already at the console, scanning for ignition controls. "Do you know how to pilot one of these?" Celine asked, panting. "I can operate $1 billion cyber defense grid. This should be easier." She smirked, despite the pain. "Let's hope." The boat roared to life. Engines purred with predator smoothness. Alexander gripped the controls, reversed from the dock, and throttled toward the nearest launch gate. Behind them, the deck swarmed with guards, firing blindly into the night. Bullets sparked off the metal walls. The ship's alarm screamed louder than ever. The launch bay doors loomed ahead, closed tight. Alexander's pulse surged. "Celine, they've locked the exit." She reached for her bracelet again, tapping a hidden panel inside the control console. The boat's onboard AI chirped, "Override accepted." Hydraulic arms snapped into motion. The bay doors groaned open just as gunfire intensified behind them. Celine dropped low, clutching her wounded shoulder. "Hold on," Alexander warned. The escape boat surged forward, slicing through the opening just before the doors slammed shut again. Ocean spray exploded around them as they hit the waves at full throttle. The Ocean Majesty shrank behind them, lights blazing, alarms blaring. The luxury liner looked almost serene from a distance, a beacon of wealth and power. But Alexander knew better now. It wasn't just a ship. It was a floating prison. A hunting ground, a marketplace of human lives. And he had just declared war on the men who ran it. Celine leaned back, breath shallow. "We're not safe yet." Alexander nodded grimly. "I figured." From behind, searchlights swept across the water. Smaller pursuit crafts launched from hidden bays, their engines roaring in the darkness. Celine's voice was calm despite the danger. "They'll send 2, maybe 3, fast, armed, loyal." "And what do we have?" Alexander asked. She smiled faintly. "Speed, and a very dangerous secret." The boat surged into the night, the chase beginning in earnest. The escape boat sliced across the midnight ocean, throwing up silver spray under the moonlight. The engines roared beneath Alexander's hands as he pushed the throttle to its limit. The luxury cruiser shrank into the distance, but the danger only grew. Celine leaned beside him, gripping the dashboard to steady herself. Despite the bleeding shoulder and exhaustion in her eyes, she remained focused. 2 pursuit boats confirmed, fast interceptors, one more approaching from the starboard side. Alexander glanced over his shoulder. Sure enough, 3 black shapes, cut across the water, sleek and predatory. Their hulls were low, painted to avoid radar and detection. They weren't just ship security, they were private military grade. Mercenaries. His pulse kicked harder. "We can't outrun all of them," he muttered. Selene didn't argue. Instead, she popped open a hidden compartment beneath her seat. Inside was a compact military-style tablet, glowing with blue schematics. "I didn't plan to escape without options," she said. "There's an unregistered dock about 20 miles east, old smuggling port. No official records. If we reach it, we can disappear." Alexander arched a brow. "You have contingency plans for everything?" Her expression tightened. "When you're born into a world of wolves, you either plan ahead or become prey." The boat jolted as a rifle round punched through the side, spraying splinters of carbon fiber. Selene didn't flinch. "They've started firing to disable the engines. If they stop us, they'll take you alive. Me? Probably not." Alexander clenched the wheel. "That won't happen." A thought struck him. "Can this thing fight back?" he asked. Selene gave a grim smile and tapped the tablet. "Auxiliary defense system. It's not much, but it might buy us time." The screen displayed options: smoke screen, rear countermeasures, auto turrets, limited ammunition. Alexander hit the turret. Command without hesitation. The escape boat's stern split open with a mechanical hiss. Twin turrets emerged, sleek and deadly, tracking the nearest pursuer. Before the mercenaries could react, the turrets unleashed a rapid burst of smart rounds. Bright flashes lit the night. One of the smaller pursuit boats veered wildly as its windshield shattered and the pilot slumped over the controls. It spun, out, crashed against a wave and flipped sideways into the sea. One down, two to go. The remaining boats fanned out to avoid becoming easy targets. Selene's voice stayed calm. "We can't take both, even with full ammo." Alexander scanned the horizon. "Then we don't. We outthink them." The nearest pursuer gained speed, closing to within 50 meters. A sniper perched on the bow, laser sight sweeping the waves. They were preparing to take out the turrets or Selene. Alexander yanked the boat hard to port. Waves slammed against the hull, but the sudden move threw off the sniper's aim. Selene leaned into him. "There's a small chain of rocks about. 3 miles ahead, shallow water. Too dangerous for high-speed chases. They'll think we wouldn't dare." "Exactly." Alexander grinned without humor. "They don't know me very well." The second pursuer fired again. More rounds punched into the side of the boat, dangerously close to the fuel line. Selene activated the smokescreen. Thick black vapor exploded from the stern, cloaking them. In darkness, the pursuing boat swerved, momentarily blinded. Alexander steered toward the rocks at top speed. His mind raced through the calculations: distance, speed, draft, depth. The escape boat had a reinforced hull and a shallow keel. The fight. Mercenary boats? Probably built for open water, not weaving through hazards. As the rocks came into view, jagged teeth rising from the sea, Selene grabbed his arm. "You're sure about this?" "No." He didn't slow down. The boat darted between the first set of rocks. Water surged around them, waves colliding against the stone with thunderous crashes. Alexander's pulse thundered just as loud in his ears. The first pursuit boat followed, but the pilot was cautious, slowing down to avoid wrecking the hull. Mistake. The second pursuer wasn't so smart. It tried to keep pace, misjudged the gap, and clipped a submerged rock. The boat's side crumpled. With a deafening screech of metal, it flipped violently, throwing its crew into the sea. Selene glanced back. "One left, and they're smarter now," Alexander muttered. The remaining boat pulled back slightly, waiting for them to clear the rocks. It was obvious they would continue the chase once Alexander and Selene hit open water again. But Selene wasn't finished yet. She tapped the console again, activating the last countermeasure. "Proximity mines. I planted them along this channel weeks ago, just in case." Alexander stared at her, part horrified, part impressed. "You rigged the smuggler's route?" "I don't trust anyone." The escape boat skimmed past the final rock. Behind them, the last mercenary boat followed cautiously, trying to maintain visual without risking another collision. Selene pressed a button on the tablet. A split second later, the sea erupted. An explosion ripped the night apart. Water and debris shot sky high. The pursuing boat disintegrated into flames and fragments. Silence returned, broken only by the roar of their own engines Alexander exhaled heavily. That's all of them. For now. He nodded toward the smuggling port ahead, a dark silhouette barely visible against the distant coastline. Let's get to that dock before your father sends something worse. Selene leaned back, pain evident in her pale face. He won't stop, not until one of us is dead. Alexander's grip tightened on the wheel. Then we make sure it's him. The boat surged forward, leaving behind the burning wreckage and the floating corpse of Lucien Moreau's latest mistake. But both of them knew this was only the beginning. The wolves were still hunting, and the real war hadn't even started. The smuggler's port revealed itself slowly through the mist, a crescent-shaped cove hidden between jagged cliffs. No lights marked the dock, just shadows and the faint outline of weather-beaten warehouses crouched against the rocks like sleeping beasts. Alexander throttled down the engine as they approached. The stealth boat slipped into the dock with barely a ripple, the powerful hum of its engines fading into the night. Selene shifted beside him, pressing a hand against the wound on her shoulder. Blood had soaked the shredded remains of her evening gown, but her eyes stayed sharp. We can't linger here. This place was safe once, but my father pays better than loyalty. Some of the locals will have sold us out the moment his bounty went. Live? Alexander nodded. I figured. He scanned the dock. Crates stacked 3 stories high formed a maze of shadowed paths between the water's edge and the warehouse doors. A few figures moved in the distance, hunched under hooded jackets. Smugglers, runners, or mercenaries, it didn't matter. They would all be watching. Alexander pocketed the pistol and grabbed a compact first aid kit from beneath the console. We need to deal with your shoulder before it gets worse. Selene hesitated, pride flickering in her expression. But then she nodded, letting him guide her into the boat's cabin where faint emergency lighting glowed along the walls. Alexander worked quickly, cutting away the torn fabric. The bullet wound was a deep graze, bloody but not fatal. He cleaned. Applied a coagulant and wrapped it tightly. His hands were steady despite the madness of the past hour. Years of corporate warfare had given him nerves of steel. Selene watched him, a faint smile ghosting across her lips. Not bad for a billionaire. I multitask, he said dryly. When he finished, she touched his wrist gently. We need allies. There's someone here who might help us if he's still alive. Who? An old broker named Cassian Vega. Used to be my father's fence. He arranged shipments, laundered money, made things and people vanish. He owes me. Big. Alexander's eyes narrowed. And you trust him? I trust him to value profit over loyalty, same as everyone in my father's circle. They left the boat, moving cautiously along the dock. Alexander kept his pistol low but ready. Every footstep echoed slightly on the damp wood. The figures in the distance melted away into deeper shadows as they approached, watching, waiting. Selene led him toward the farthest warehouse, where rusted iron letters spelled out Vega Shipping. Co. Half the letters were missing, leaving only Viu Ashping. As they neared, a figure stepped out from the shadows beneath the loading bay canopy. Tall, gaunt, grey hair pulled into a knot. A long black coat flared slightly in the breeze. Cassian Vega, Selene called softly. The man smiled, a slow, shark-like grin that didn't reach his eyes. Selene Moreau, when I heard the bounty, I thought it was a mistake. You've always been cleverer than the rest. His gaze slid to Alexander. And you brought a friend. Bold. Alexander stepped forward. We need passage off the grid, now. Cassian chuckled. Everything's now with you people. Always urgency, always fire behind your heels. He studied Alexander with cold, assessing eyes. You're Graves Tech, aren't you? The billionaire CEO who walked into a snake pit. Alexander said nothing. Cassian's smile widened. I admire it. Foolish, but admirable. Selene cut in sharply. We'll pay. Whatever you want. Cassian's grin faded. That's the problem, my dear. Lucien Moreau offered something no one can match. From the shadows around them, armed figures stepped out, at least a dozen, rifles, pistols, tactical gear. Alexander instinctively raised his weapon, pulling Selene behind him. Cassian spread his hands apologetically. It's just business. I could shelter you for a price, yes, but Moreau promised not only wealth. His eyes gleamed. He promised me his seat. Control over Vega's old territories, I can't refuse that. Celine's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. He's lying. You'll never control anything. He'll kill you the moment you're useful. Perhaps. Cassian shrugged. But until then. The mercenaries raised their weapons. Alexander didn't hesitate. He shoved Celine sideways behind a stack of crates as the first gunshots cracked through the air. He fired back, hitting the nearest attacker square in the chest. Another merc ducked behind a forklift. Muzzle flashes lit the darkness like bursts of lightning. Celine grabbed a discarded rifle from the dock and slid into cover beside him. We can't win this shootout. Too many. Alexander nodded grimly. Then we don't. His eyes darted to a fuel tank chained to the loading crane overhead. He shot, the lock holding it in place. The massive metal drum crashed down, bursting open and flooding the dock with slick, flammable fuel. Celine's eyes widened. You're insane. Multitasker, Alexander said again. As Cassian shouted orders, Alexander fired a single round into the fuel trail. Flames erupted instantly, a wall of fire racing across the dock. Mercenaries scattered, some shrieking as the blaze consumed their escape routes. Celine grabbed Alexander's hand. To the warehouse, now. They sprinted through the firestorm, bullets zipping past them, heat licking their skin. Cassian's voice howled behind them, lost in the roar of the flames. They burst into the warehouse. The heavy door slammed shut behind them, but inside, they found not safety, but another terrible revelation. Wooden crates, hundreds of them, marked not with shipping codes but human trafficking symbols. Each crate had a barcode, and beneath it, a list of contents, ages, genders, prices. Celine's face went pale. It's worse than I thought. Alexander's stomach turned. Your father's not just selling people on that ship. He's using this whole port. This is an international supply chain. Celine nodded grimly. If we don't stop him now, he'll rebuild it again and again. Heavy footsteps pounded outside the warehouse. The survivors were regrouping. Celine turned to Alexander. We burn it all tonight. And then? Then we take the war straight to my father's doorstep. The warehouse smelled of salt, oil, and something far worse, fear soaked into the very walls. Alexander swept his flashlight across the towering stacks of crates. Some were already open, revealing false bottoms and hidden compartments. Others held restraints, drug kits, forged documents, a machinery of human misery disguised as cargo. Celine moved with controlled fury, ripping open crates and slashing through shipping manifests. This isn't just my father's operation anymore. He's expanded. Multiple buyers, international routes. These codes. She ran her hand over a crate marked with symbols Alexander didn't recognize. They lead to government contracts. Military transport. This is bigger than smuggling. This is sanctioned trafficking. Alexander's pulse pounded. If this gets out, it could take down entire governments. And that's why we have to destroy it. Celine's eyes blazed. But we'll need more than fire. We need the data. He nodded, scanning the warehouse. There must be a server or control room. Something that tracks inventory. Celine pointed toward an office on the upper level. Its windows were blacked out, but faint LED lights glowed inside. There, Cassian always kept digital backups in case he needed leverage. As they moved toward the staircase, gunfire rattled the warehouse doors. The mercenaries were trying to breach the metal shutters. Alexander cursed under his breath. We've got minutes at best. They reached the office door. Alexander kicked it open, pistol raised. Inside, rows of monitors displayed dock surveillance, feeds, ship manifests, and encrypted data files. A reinforced desk held a server tower humming softly. Celine moved quickly, connecting her bracelet to the server via a magnetic port. My father built this tech. I can extract the data fast. Alexander stood guard by the window, watching shadows gather outside. The mercenaries were regrouping, using forklifts to batter down the doors. Sparks flew as metal struck metal. Hurry, he muttered. Celine's bracelet flashed green. Got it. All files downloaded. She pulled the device free. Now we light the match. Alexander planted a line of thermite charges around the server and along the fuel lines feeding the warehouses. Backup generator. Celine set charges beneath the crates, rigging the entire building to collapse inward. As they worked, a voice crackled over a nearby intercom. Cold. Calm. Lucien Moreau. Celine, I underestimated you. She froze, eyes narrowing. Your resourcefulness does you credit, but this will be your final act of rebellion. My men will take you alive, Graves. He's disposable, but you're still useful to me. Celine strode to the intercom and slammed the button. Your empire is dying, Father, and when this warehouse burns, your secrets burn with it. A low, humorless chuckle. I don't need the port. I already have the next shipment secured. But thank you for revealing which data to scrub from my systems. Celine paled. Alexander frowned. He's stalling. He has a cleaner team en route to wipe the evidence and us. An enormous crash shook the building. The mercenaries had broken through. Alexander grabbed Celine's hand. Time's up. We go. Now. They raced down the stairs as boots thundered inside. Muzzle flashes split the darkness. Bullets sparked off metal railings. Alexander fired back, dropping 2 mercenaries. Celine took out a third with a precise shot. But more poured in. The thermite timers counted down silently behind them. 5, 4, 3. They burst through a side exit, just as the first detonations roared. Heat slammed into their backs, driving them to the ground. The warehouse ignited like a volcano. Flames surged sky-high, black smoke billowing into the night. Crates exploded one after another, sending shrapnel and burning debris across the dock. The remaining mercenaries screamed, retreating in chaos. Celine coughed, pulling herself up beside Alexander. We did it. He nodded, eyes on the inferno. It's a start. A sleek black SUV screeched to a halt nearby. For a moment, Alexander raised his pistol again, but then the driver stepped out, hands raised, an older man. Hard eyes, scarred jaw. Name's Rourke, he called over the roar of the flames. Used to run private security for Graves Tech. Your head of crisis response sent me. Thought you might need extraction. Alexander's shoulders eased slightly. His old network wasn't entirely useless after all. Rourke pointed toward the hills beyond the port. Helicopters waiting. But we've got incoming. Satellite picked up fast movers inbound, not mercs, not local authorities. Military-grade black ops. They'll erase this whole area and anyone left in it. Celine swore under her breath. My father's final solution. Alexander nodded grimly. Then let's not be here when they arrive. They jumped into the SUV. As Rourke sped them toward the hills, Celine clutched the data bracelet tight. Alexander met her gaze. The warehouse burned. But this is our real weapon. Celine nodded. With this, we can expose every buyer, every complicit government, every corporation involved. My father's entire network. But once we start, Alexander warned, there's no going back. They'll all come for us. She smiled faintly. Let them. Behind them, the burning port collapsed in a rain of sparks and smoke. Ahead, the helicopter's blades cut through the night air. The first battle was over, but the war was just beginning. The helicopter roared over the coastline, banking hard as it climbed toward open sky. Below, the smuggler's port had become an inferno, flames devouring every trace of Lucien Moreau's coastal operation. Alexander sat beside Celine, the data bracelet secure in his grip. Her face was pale from blood loss, exhaustion, and adrenaline, but her eyes still burned with purpose. Across from them, Rourke secured the cabin door and pulled down a tactical screen. A digital map flickered to life, pinpointing their destination. Private airstrip, Rourke said over the roar. 1 hour east, your Gulf Stream's waiting, Alexander. Your team scrambled to prep it the moment the data download triggered a red alert on Graves Tech's mainframe. Alexander frowned. I didn't authorize that. Rourke grinned slightly. Your CTO did. Said if you went missing, she was to assume the worst and initiate a full-scale blackout protocol. Smart. Alexander had hired survivors, not corporate drones. Celine leaned forward. We can't go dark. Not yet. We have to strike now, before my father can erase the trail. He'll already be scrubbing files, eliminating witnesses. Rourke nodded grimly. We know. Satellite picked up a rapid mobilization at Moreau's primary fortress, Valmont Island. Alexander's brow furrowed. Thought Valmont was a myth. Ghost location. It was until your data pool revealed otherwise. Celine's voice sharpened. Then that's where we finish this. Rourke hesitated. It's a fortress, anti-air batteries, private army. Getting in would be impossible, Alexander interrupted, which means it's perfect. Celine's lips curved into a dangerous smile. We don't need to invade. We just need to get close enough to broadcast the data to the world. Rourke glanced between them. You're proposing a suicide run? No, Alexander said, a hostile takeover. By dawn, the Gulf Stream sliced through cloud cover, descending toward international waters near Valmont Island. Alexander had changed out of his torn tuxedo into tactical black. Celine wore borrowed combat gear, loose enough not to irritate her wound, tight enough to move quickly. The plan was brutally simple, a stealth approach aboard a borrowed prototype drone sub designed for covert insertions. Get inside Valmont's communications hub, upload the data, expose Moreau's network in real time, and if they failed, they wouldn't live long enough to regret it. The drone sub launched at dawn. Celine and Alexander crouched inside the narrow hull as the craft skimmed beneath the waves. Above them, Valmont's silhouette loomed, a rocky fortress crowned by sleek steel towers. Armed patrol boats circled the perimeter, turrets tracked the horizon, helicopters prowled the skies. As they surfaced in a cave beneath the southern cliff, Celine whispered, "There's a maintenance shaft here. It's old. Pre-construction. Leads straight into the sub-levels." Alexander checked his weapon. "After all this, you still know every weak spot." Her eyes softened. "My father taught me how to build unbreakable things, and how to find their cracks." They breached the shaft and began climbing. Each rung of the rusted ladder echoed like a gunshot in the confined space. Above them, the fortress pulsed with quiet menace. The sub-level corridor was empty. No cameras, no patrols, almost too perfect. Alexander's instincts screamed trap, but they pressed on. They reached the central comms hub, a vast chamber filled with blinking servers and a glass floor suspended. Over a deep pit, where data cables coiled like metal snakes. Celine approached the master terminal. "This is it. Once I upload, the files will hit every media outlet, human rights agency, and government watchdog simultaneously." Alexander stood guard at the door, pistol raised. "Do it." As Celine connected. Her bracelet, a cold voice echoed from the darkness. "I expected more caution from you, daughter." Lucien Moreau stepped into the light. He was taller than Alexander had imagined. Immaculate suit, silver hair, eyes like winter steel. And beside him, Astra, alive, armored, rifle in hand. A dozen armed guards fanned out around them. Lucien smiled faintly. "Your rebellion was impressive, but childish." He looked at Alexander. You should have walked away when you had the chance." Alexander leveled his pistol at Lucien's heart. "You should have stayed in the shadows where monsters belong." Lucien's smile faded. "Kill them!" The guards raised their weapons, but Astra hesitated. Her gaze locked with Celine's. Celine spoke softly. "Astra, he will kill you too. Once we're gone, you're next." Astra's jaw tightened. "I have no choice." "You do." The room held its breath. Then Astra turned. In one swift motion, she gunned down the two nearest guards. Lucien roared, reaching for his concealed weapon, but Alexander was faster. One shot, clean, precise. Lucien staggered, hand clutching his chest. Blood bloomed across his shirt. He fell to his knees, staring in disbelief. "Not possible." Celine's voice was ice. "Your empire ends today." She triggered the upload. Data surged across the screens, flooding into the global network. Names, accounts, shipping logs, transaction histories. The whole rot exposed to the world. Lucien's final breath rattled in his throat. His eyes darkened, and then he toppled backward into the pit below. Dead. The remaining guards threw down their weapons. Astra stood beside. Celine, rifle lowered. Orders? Celine met Alexander's gaze. We dismantle what's left. Together. By nightfall, Valmont Island burned. Governments issued arrest warrants. Corporations fell. Armies of lawyers and activists moved to free the victims and prosecute the buyers. Celine and Alexander stood at the cliff's edge watching the flames. You could walk away now, Celine said softly. Your company, your life. No more danger. Alexander shook his head. I'm not built for walking away. Not from this. Celine smiled. For the first time in years, it was real. Then let's rebuild. Something better. And together they turned away from the wreckage of one empire to build the next. But this time not for power, for justice.